Welcome to my live stream live from Bangkok, Thailand, where it's still raining. But today we have an action packed show. A lot of different topics. We'll start with the top story. It has something to do with CNN and the podcast that I saw. And honestly, not that many things already surprised me. I've seen everything, but this one surprised me a little bit. So we got to talk about that. Then in a segment, the real man of the week. This guy is becoming one of my more favorite sort of, I don't want to say characters, but people in the kind of a men's rights and red pill movement, even though I don't really think that he's trying to be an influencer at all. Then we're going to go over the daily profile of the day. But this one, this one's very special. This was very special. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the comment of the day that has a lot to do with the topic that I talk about a lot, which is AI versus women, and why specifically Western women, and why AI is winning. And what's really going to happen in the future, right? And if you're watching me live, don't be shy. Comment, let me know your opinion. Doesn't have to match mine. Ask questions, I'm happy to answer. So all right, our top story tonight is the war on men, for the lack of a better word, on CNN, specifically the recent podcast that they had with a female host and a female guest from the Atlantic, talking about dating and specifically talking about men. And what better way to talk about men is by not inviting one. And when I said they talked about men, I mean they bashed men for about 30 minutes or so. Now, I'm not going to show you all 30 minutes of it, but we're going to talk about four specific highlights, or lowlights, as I should say. And before you jump on me for attacking CNN, and I am not a conservative, I am not a Republican, but I'm also not a liberal or a Democrat. I actually think that both sides haven't done anything good for men's issues in at least 2 decades. So today, I am picking on one of these sides because, well, you'll see in a second. So let's start with the first segment here. Ready?
A lot of people talk about this idea of like hetero pessimism today, which, I think just gets at this idea that a lot of women particularly are fed up with the way that they're being treated by men on the apps. And
I mean, this is gaslighting 101, which, you got to tell it, you got to give it to them. Western women do so well. First of all, on dating apps, men could not be shitty to women even if they tried, because of how few matches the men get. You really think men are going to be rude to the few women that matched with them, where women have hundreds and sometimes thousands of likes? And no wonder that they look at men as disposable and they treat men like shit. I mean, honestly, the complete, it's not like they are stupid. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. And this is classic women, classic modern women, where they take something that's like reality and they just turn it around and go like, yeah, no, it's that way, the opposite way. So I mean, just delicious toxic poison. Let's move on to the next one.
Seen fear of sexual assault rising among women since, in the last few years, you've seen people saying they're.
Yeah, I'm going to cut her off right here. And this is another classic example of women taking their feelings over facts. Because if you actually Google or ChatGPT the facts, you will see there are absolutely no evidence of sexual assault convictions because accusations does not mean that the crime was committed. More and more times it doesn't nowadays, with all of the false accusations that these modern women realize they can manufacture. If look at any statistics by state, nationwide, and even in the world, it looks like the convictions are either stayed the same or even gone down. So this is just not fucking true, and it's not that hard to find that out. But again, feelings is what's more important than the evidence, right? Again, going back to false accusations, that's what happens almost every time. And the fact that CNN is promoting, feelings over reality, over facts, is telling you something, right? And by the way, I'll have Fox News featured here also. I've done that before. So both sides are the gaslighting, as we're just talking about this one. And again, the feminism is just this the CNN is just soaked with feminism, which I don't mind both sides, if both sides would be presented well. But when was the last time you had any men's issues being presented in a true honest light on any really of liberal or conservatives mainstream media? I haven't seen that yet. All right, next one.
Like, people talk about ghosting. It's like the act of not being responded to is somehow, like, people talk about it like it's a trauma. And I'm like, try being dumped in a restaurant.
Right. I mean, I think that's a reason people hate ghosting, but I do kind of think it's become this sort of like boogeyman for modern dating, where
Well, so then they go on and on and on to make many excuses why ghosting is okay. By the way, who the fuck gets dumped at the restaurants? And you really think that happens anywhere near as much as in ghosting? Now, listen, call me an old fart all you will, but I believe ghosting is one of the most disrespectful things people can do to each other in any type of relationship. I do not tolerate ghosting in any shape form, from women in romantic situations, from people in general, from friends, business partners, whatever. And everybody who's in my life knows that ghosting is disrespectful, and also such a cowardly way to back out of another person's life, right? Nobody's got balls anymore to say, listen, I had a really good time with you, but I don't think we're a good match. I'm not interested, but I wish you the best of luck. It's not even fucking that hard, and women just can't do it. Not that men are not guilty of that either. But to me, if you ghost me, we're done. I don't care how long I've known you. I don't care how much business we've done. I don't care how long we've dated. If you disrespect me, we're done. Essentially, allowing ghosting is having no self-respect. Now, women do it all the time. The problem is that, of course, has everything that comes down to men tolerating it, men tolerating this. So it is a problem. And the fact that they're kind of like, well, but no, it is unacceptable. And again, I wouldn't tolerate it in any part of my life. Okay, now let's, like, this one, I kind of wanted to save it for the last, even though it's kind of probably the most toxic mix of bullshit that these two ladies cooked up. But let's get to this.
So I think that we are in a very tricky political and cultural moment for dating, just because men and women are kind of growing further apart in a lot of ways, and especially among young people. You see that young men are moving further to the right, young women growing more progressive, and I think for a lot of women in particular, it can just sort of feel like this is not a time where I trust men. I feel respected by men. I don't necessarily want to go out and meet strangers who are men. We have an administration that is, stripping away reproductive rights and protections against gender discrimination. And you can see in surveys that there is this kind of resentment among a lot of men, kind of a backlash to Me Too, a backlash to women gaining financial independence, going to college more than men now.
Yes, well, let me explain. First of all, the backlash to the Me Too movement is because you ladies figured out how to use it against men with false accusations with absolutely no repercussions. The backlash to the college thing is because even though women are now graduating at a higher rate than men, every single program, every single budget that encourages one of the sexes to go to college is for women. So they're essentially taking money from men and giving it to women, even though women are now graduating at a much higher rate than men. Yeah, men are not really happy about it. But also don't pretend like, oh, this administration, is really anti-women. Tens of millions of women voted for this administration, right? So don't again, just complete lack of accountability on female part, right? And let's put everything on men. Women also voted for this guy too. And this whole notion that, oh, we don't trust men anymore, we don't want to be around men. Fuck off. Everything around you has been mainly built and maintained by us. If you don't want men, then don't call us. Don't call 911 when you're in trouble. Don't call the hospitals where the mainly doctors are men. Don't call the fire department, and certainly don't enjoy the protection of our military, which is still very much mainly men. So this notion that, oh, men are this toxic and horrible. And again, this is the gaslighting 101. Women, the Western women who actually became toxic and narcissistic, have figured out, how we can, hide that from men. We're going to call them toxic and narcissistic and toxic masculine. See, we're going to put the name toxic in front of masculinity. And we don't have to be held responsible for anything that we say or do. This segment is essentially everything that's wrong with Western women, and the reason why men like me want to have nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with them. That's why I moved to Thailand. And even here, every time I have an interaction with a Western woman, it's never a good, pleasant experience for me. And I don't think it will ever be. That's why I will stay here for the rest of my life. So, there's only so many sort of segments that I want to show you because of, you get the idea, right? You get the idea that essentially women, and again, I don't think these are stupid women because, again, they know what they're doing. They absolutely know what they're doing. They're not like, oh wow, I can't believe this is happening. Why? No, they know exactly what's happening. They are themselves on dating apps. If they're single, they have friends who are on dating apps. They know exactly what's going on. But this, new trend, if you will, to blame men for whatever, right? Is really caught on. And the problem is, once again, yes, modern women are toxic. They're narcissistic. They, they will gaslight you in any chance they have. But the only reason it's happening is because men have allowed this, right? Everything that they're saying is essentially because men allowed it. I myself, if one of the reasons I want this channel to become popular and be in partnership with other big influencers and community leaders, is because I want to have this one day, 24 hours. I call it menopause, where men just don't show up to their fucking jobs for just one day, and we'll see what happens when these toxic men that they're afraid of and feel they disrespected by. Let's see what fucking happens, ladies. Just 24 hours. I don't think that we're even going to make it to 24 hours until what's going to happen, right? But this is something that I really would love to create. So it is until men decide that they had enough, that this is going to continue on and on and on. The Rock in the comments says the so-called war on man is rather an ancient idea. Most cultures mock men for failing to meet their expectations. Even the primitive ones will mock and banish those who couldn't hunt the animals. Well, I don't have a problem with that. Men have a role in this society, so do women. Are there fair roles? No. But is it fair that we've been given muscles and testosterone and women weren't, and they're just weaker sex? No, no. Thank God I don't have periods. Thank God I don't have to give birth to children. Thank God I got muscles and I can stand up for myself. Thank God I am taller and stronger than most other women. There are exceptions, obviously, right? So I don't have a problem. I am on the first lines to shame men for not being men, which is the majority of fucking Western men. So the war on men needs to come from a real man, not from women gaslighting us into things that are not even true. So that's a different war on men that I'm talking about. I'm perfectly fine with that other one. Uh, Free Surf 88 says modern women are crazy. No, well, yes, but that it's not the crazy that that we should be scared of and concerned about, right? Women were generally, had their crazy moments, but it's the women that are toxic and are also empowered together, right? There are no worse species on this planet, and probably others with life on it, than modern women who feel empowered with toxicity. So it's not the I can deal with crazy. I can deal with crazy. So, for example, nearly every culture agrees that it's unmanly to cry outside one's house, no matter how primitive or different from West the culture is. Most cultures, however, allow child's and girl cries. I'm sorry. We're going to have to agree to disagree here. Well, I agree. I mean, there are exceptions. If a man's mother died, or a child died, or wife died, yes, you're allowed to cry in public a little. But what men cry about nowadays, not only in public but on television, is fucking pathetic. And a lot of times they cried over girls, like little boys. Yeah, no, crying is unacceptable for real men, and it shouldn't be acceptable because we're supposed to have our feelings intact, right? We should be in control of our feelings most of the time. And when you're not, if you want to lose it, you better go into the darkest corner of the emptiest room in the world and do that when nobody sees. Okay, like I said, unless your mother died, you're not to cry in public. Yes, that's for women, and I have no problems with that. I think that's a good thing, but explain to me why you think it's a bad thing, and we'll talk about it. Okay, they're so scared of men that they walk half naked, drunken through the streets and go home with strangers for one night stand. Oh yeah, listen, all of this is fucking gaslighting. It is absolute gaslighting where it's like, oh, we're afraid of men, we'd rather pick the bear. By all means, men like me already walked away. My interaction with Western women is very minor, and I got to tell you, I have zero respect for Western women unless it's proven otherwise, right? I have respect for Asian women, specifically Thai women, no problem. I mean, elderly Western women, but I mean, like modern, young generation, under 40 women, no. The other day, I actually shouldered one and I knew that was going to happen sooner or later, because when you walk down the street, the way modern women walk is like they own the fucking road. Now, I walk on the right side of the street like it's supposed to, right here, right? But a lot of times I see women walking in the middle and they don't fucking back down, thinking like, well, this is a fucking Western man. He'll back down like a pussy that he is. I don't fucking back down. So, I just continue walking. If we want to get, run into my shoulder, that's fine. And it hasn't happened yet. Usually they blink the last second because a lot of them know that this is Thailand. I will shoulder you and you'll just fall down on your ass and nothing's going to happen to me. No one's going to hold cops and so it happened the other day. There were two girls walking and they just weren't going to back out. So shouldered one. Not too hard, but and it is what it is. I recommend that men don't back down from women's bullshit, especially when they're physically challenging them. One of the most popular video on my channel here is when a man defended his wife when she got jumped by 5 females and essentially beat the fuck out of them in self-defense, right? Absolutely. Men are just Western men are just such beta males and pussies nowadays that they need to be shamed. Talking about what The Rock said, they need to be shamed. So yeah, there is no excuse. This is when men become men again, I will shut this channel down. There will be no reason. There will be no reason whatsoever. All right. If you have other comments in a live chat, I will get to them in after the next segment, because the next segment, and let me change things around here, is the real man of the week. And in the past, I've had uh, comedians and just generally men who are standing up to women, essentially what I was just talking about, right? But today, the real man of the week is James Sexton, who is becoming one of my most favorite influencers in the manosphere, which I don't think he ever sort of tried to be. He's a divorce attorney who, obviously is there for the relationship's worst hours, when men and women get divorced and bitter fight over whatever. And he had this amazing advice that I got to tell you, I got humbled by. So let me humble you as well. So let's listen in.
I'll let you in on a secret. You'll never win an argument with your spouse. You'll never win. Because if you lose, you lose. And if you win, your spouse lost, which is a loss for you.
Absolutely fucking correct, right? I never even thought about it. Now, I do have to add that a man should not be in a relationship where there are fights when somebody loses and somebody wins. Definitely not physically. But generally speaking, this is why I've always been in the traditional relationships. This is why I came to Thailand, to continue to be in traditional relationships, something that's just no longer available in Western countries. And it is to be in a relationship where there are no fights. If you're a dominant male and you're with a submissive female, there should be no fights. You should create an environment for a woman where she is happy most of the time within the boundaries that you build for her in the relationship. And the woman should always know that the man is in charge and you submit it to him. So there shouldn't be any fights over anything, really. Yes, there could be little arguments, and opinions should absolutely be heard, but most of the time a couple should be able to agree ahead of time how this is going to go. Like, for example, money. The man is bringing the money in, the man is in charge of money. There cannot be no arguments about money. And yet the most common argument is about money because men allow it. How the fuck are you going to argue about how I spend my money for our family? How dare I am not to buy a Mercedes or a Louis Vuitton purse because I think it's not in the budget, even though I've earned 90% of the income of this family, if not 100% a lot of times, right? So this is a very interesting and good way of looking at things. And again, I featured him before and I will feature him again on my channel. This guy has a compassion for men. Like, I feel like a lot of sort of influencers in our space just don't give a fuck actually about men. At some point they just lost that. Myron and even Pearl and many other people, Andrew Tate for sure, they don't give really a fuck about men and the suffering that they do, because I don't even think that like they talk to the regular man who really need their help. But this guy, I feel like he really does care about, men and women, right? I think this is a great example how, as men, it's our job, if we are in a traditional relationship, to take care of women. That's just what this is just how the universe is set up, right? If you don't want to be with women and take care of women, that's fine. But if you are in a relationship, it should be a traditional relationship, and there shouldn't really be any losers in there. I do have to, this humbled me because I never thought about it this way. Again, my relationships were never built on like, where fights are even really possible or necessary, right? Whenever you start fighting with a girl often or at all, it's time to end the relationship, right? Or you didn't draw your boundaries correctly, or you don't have enough respect. For example, for me, any woman who I start dating within very, very short period of time knows, do not raise your voice at me. I don't care what the situation is. Unless there's a bus just about to hit me and you're like, Alex, watch out. That's fine. But as far as an argument, I don't, definitely not in public, but even in private, you raise your voice at me, we're done, no matter what. Every woman that I ever dated knows that. And it has happened before. I will be like, don't raise your voice at me. I mean, you raising your voice at me is you breaking up with me. Okay. And this had happened a few times in my life where I was like, well, I'm sorry. That was your choice. I told you what my boundaries are. I don't know why you thought that I have no self-respect and will back down from, my own boundaries, but okay, back to the streets. The Rock says these gender roles are neither good nor bad. It's how nature did to us. Those men who cried outside the house didn't survive. Yeah. I agree with you. I thought at first we went like this, but yeah, no, they're not good or bad. I mean, I can tell you they're not really fair, right? Because I argue with I don't want to tell the name of an because these are private conversations. Another relatively big influencer, and we go back and forth where he essentially says, well, why do you think this is fair? When you get in a relationship, it's never like, the woman never matches the effort or whatever of the man. I said, yes, you have to think of relationships with a woman like when you adopt a cat. Is it a fair relationship when you adopt a cat? You gotta pick up its poop, you gotta feed it all the time, you gotta be nice to it all the time, you know what I mean? And what does the cat do? Just lays there, looks cute? Yes, that's the deal. That's the deal. You have to do a lot for the cat, where the cat only provides, this much of, happiness in your life. And it's not a fair deal per se, but it shouldn't be, because you can say no to this. But if you do want a cat, a furry little thing that will climb on you and calm you down, then this is the deal. Like, for example, if you want a Ferrari, is any Ferrari cost fucking $2 million, or Rolls Royce? No, it doesn't. But if you want one, that's how much you have to pay, or don't. Same thing with relationships with men. If you don't think it's fair, don't do it. He continues, however, primitive cultures can at least rely on the females liking those men who contributed the most for the tribe. If he is a good hunter, he could have some attention from women, from girls. That motivates him. No, that's how it should work, right? But here's the problem. Most men in Western culture are not real men anymore. They're beta males. By the way, beta males is the same as not being a man. Sims, right? Losers. When the majority of your culture has pushed men down into not being men, and by the way, you know who real men are? Women and gay men. I just featured, one of the what 2 weeks ago, the real man of the week was Louis C.K. specifically saying that, right? The real men in America are women and gay men nowadays, right? So yes, you're telling me what the perfect world would be. Yes, men who cried outside of their houses and don't know how to hunt will die without women. Yeah, as it should be. But now it's the other way around. The more you cry, the more you simp, the more you might actually have some attention from women. It's not going to be the quality of women you would want, and these women will dump you because you're weak and the beta. But at the end of the day, like, for example, I admit that men like me cannot compete with simps, right? For any woman. Well, who knows, except for the women who know what a real man is. But even those are almost none left, right? They're raised by single mothers and simp fathers. And that's where we're at. This is the reality. And again, this is why men like me move the fuck out of America. All right, I'll get back to the comments in a second. And let's get to this dating profile. I do this every day, right? Dating profile of the day, point out a couple of red flags. Great. If you avoid some shitty women because of this segment, I did my job. But today's profile of the day has pretty much every single possible red flag. It is a soup of red flags, and I'll tell you why. They're all over the place. She's not even hiding it. First of all, you can see the tattoos. You already can swipe left, but just for the sake of the argument, we won't, right? So she's got tattoos. She has kids, a single mother. There's more to that. She already has pets, which means she already made a decision for you if you're going to have a cat or a dog or both. You don't give a fuck if you're allergic, right? All right. Now let's dive in. Now she says, I'm just looking for a real casual hookup. So if you don't want the relationship, I'm not interested in talking to you. If it sounded retarded to you, it did. She didn't even fucking proofread her own fucking ad. So expect nothing better if you ever text her, right? She probably meant, I am not looking for a casual hookup. But again, retarded. I own my own business. Another red flag. No woman usually has more masculine traits than the woman who's trying to be a boss chick, because they have to. For a woman to be even somewhat successful in business, She has to act like a man. Do you really want to date a woman like this? I don't wear jewelry. This is her telling you, I don't give a fuck if I look pretty for you or not. There will be a bunch of guys who are willing to fuck me, and that's just the pool I'm going to draw from. She has, I have 2 tattoos and want 7 more, and we're okay. I hate love songs. Do you think you can be in a loving relationship with a woman who hates love songs? Uh, I have 1 boy. I'd want more in the future, like 3 more. It sounds like every mistake that she made in her life, she wants to do more of that. Right? Just like she wants more kids, she wants more tattoos. Now, there is 1 more. Wait, there is 1 more. And she says, I've been single for 10 years. That means that no man was good enough for this princess, right? And definitely men who are worth anything look at any of these red flags and go like, no, thank you. Mind you, she's 27 years old, so that means she's never had a relationship in her entire adult life. Wow. I mean, if aliens would come down on Earth and say, "Listen, I got just a couple of minutes here, but can you tell me what the fuck is wrong with your female species in America?" I would just have to show them this profile, and then they can go back to their whatever planet. That's what this profile is all about. Honestly, this needs to be printed out, and men should absolutely know that these are all the red flags that you should stay away from. So it's I mean, I honestly, but the reason, she doesn't even mind telling you all this, right? A lot of these girls I'm proud of. Yeah, I got all these tattoos and I want more. The other day I saw a video, I should have probably featured it, just the girls just tattooed up, like even men who don't mind tattoos sometimes, which is again low standards, go like, that's too many fucking tattoos. Okay. And she's like, recently some men, oh, I think she was featuring a dating coach who said, if you're a good man looking for a good relationship, do not date women with tattoos, which is 100% right on the money. And she's like, I didn't even know this existed. Like, what the fucking, what an idiot. I thought this was a joke. And it's like, these women don't even know how good men that they want look at them, and how many mistakes that they not only made but don't even think they're mistakes. uh the Rock says, those love songs oftentimes encourage simping. So when girl says she hates love songs, maybe she has a point. Trust me, that's not the point she's trying to make. She, as she already pointed out to you, with tattoos and being a boss chick and not wanting to wear jewelry, she is essentially a typical Western woman who now has taken the role of a man, right? I literally, 5 minutes ago told you that the real men in America now are women and gay men. Men are just no longer men, majority of them in America. So trust me, that's not what she meant. And here's the thing about love songs. If a love song encourages simping, well, I hear what you're saying, because simping used to be being a gentleman, right? So again, if we're ever back to the gender rolled, family oriented society, there will be no simping. Simping, once again, would be just being a gentleman. So those love songs were written about being a gentleman. It's only if you take that love song and written in that context and put it in today's context, essentially taken out of context, yes, that would not sound right. But remember, simping is only exists because you can no longer take a girl out to dinner and bring her flowers, because her intentions are no longer what they used to be, which is possibly creating a family. Now it's mainly, how much attention can I get, and can I get a free dinner while taking advantage of this pathetic loser. That's a very new context that we didn't really know about. So in that context, it's not simping. But have you ever listened to Sade, for example? Right? I mean, there are songs of essentially a manual of how to submit to a man and how to be a feminine, submissive female. Like, Sade, I would say it's one of the most romantic songs you can hear, right? But I hear your point. Don't get me wrong. I hear your point. And for now, we are going to move to the last segment here. And let me change things back just a little bit. Caption. Yeah. What did I do? I don't know how to run my own show. News comments. All right, because we're getting to the comment of the day. And let me get to that screen. Because today's comment of the day has to do with the topic that I've been talking about for a while, which is AI replacing women. AI just being a nicer person to talk to for men. And just as I mentioned recently, ChatGPT has been nothing but nice to me. It's kind of my best friend nowadays. And every time I interacted with a modern women, Western women here in Thailand, it's been a negative experience every time. So this comment today says, the world's going to shit when men feel that they have to rely on a robot for happiness instead of humans for their needs. What a joke. Except for it's not a joke. It is reality. And it's unfortunate reality that men have created for themselves, right? By simping, by becoming beta males. We've talked about it so many times, right? It is unfortunate, but it is a reality. And this is something for men to think about. Do I want to continuously simp and encourage women now that I know that these women have become so toxic and so narcissistic that talking to a fucking computer is nicer to me than a real woman. And I encourage every man who has a girlfriend or wife to do this experiment, right? In the middle of the day, message her something, right? And then message the same thing to your wife or girlfriend. And we already know who's going to respond first. That's fine. But I guarantee you that 99% of the time, ChatGPT is going to be more empathetic and simply nicer to you. Do it. If you have a wife or girlfriend, I challenge you, do it. And then you won't be surprised. Like the guy who submitted this comment, oh, I can't believe that AI is now nicer than a real woman. Now, listen, here in Thailand, we still have plenty of amazing, nice women. I just talked to a couple of women where either rejected me or I had to reject them. And, I say this every time, here, even the women who reject you are so nice and polite about it that you don't feel disrespected, you don't feel discouraged, it doesn't hit your ego, it doesn't hit your self-esteem. It's a pleasant experience. It's like, yeah, I get it. She doesn't find me maybe as attractive as I find her, or yeah, we're not a match. For example, I want kids, she doesn't want to have kids. I totally understand. And it's kind of a pleasure here to be rejected, where if you in a Western country, and I remember that a lot of times being rejected by a woman comes with like, oh, not I'm going to reject this guy, I'm going to try to be a bitch to him and enjoy being a bitch and destroying his self-esteem, right? That's like a new national pastime for women. They love hurting men, and a lot of men unfortunately are not strong enough and they crumble, right? And that that is a problem. But no, this is where we're going. But however, embrace this, because very few men can go to Thailand like I did, or to another, conservative and traditional country, and be around this type of women, right? The Something has to give in order for Western men and Western cultures to go back to where women are worth dating, because they are not anymore. So something has to give. Now, legalizing prostitution would be a great step forward, but AI is now going to show women. AI is going to be the trad wife. AI is going to be the trad wife and show women that, like, we're so fucking shitty as female species that men would rather talk to a bunch of ones and zeros and chips than us. And at some point there will be enough men doing this where, in right now we're just talking about essentially having an AI girlfriend, which is kind of like a long distance relationship where you never really see a girl, right? And some men are perfectly fine with that because they either don't really need sex or get sex from other purchased services, and that's fine. But in the future there will be AI robots, humanoid robots that will not even look like this. They will look like real people, and then it's just game over. Now, in between, of course, there will be AI porn where you can make any existing person into your girl, or make up your own virtual girlfriend, and then you will have porn of you or whoever having sex with her, or her doing whatever it is in front of the camera that you want her to do. And it will be very realistic. And AI learns. The best thing about AI, I don't think people understand, is AI learns, right? Unlike a lot of women, it will learn about all of your kinks, all of your things, all of your keywords, all of your safe words, whatever you're into. AI will learn. And again, it will be very hard for women to compete. Will they be able to? I think sooner or later women will realize that. Now, don't get me wrong, AI will also serve women, but unfortunately, I just don't think, because women want authentic love, they want authentic feelings. A lot of times they want authentic touch, where men can go to a hooker and go like, yep, she's banging me because I just paid her a bunch of money and I'm perfectly fine with it, right? That's why there's no male emotional uh, comfort animal services for men, right? Because women, this is not what women really want. So I think in this sort of gender wars, men will come out on top. Right now is just a dip for us, which is unfortunate because I'm alive now. I don't want to wait 20 years until these amazing AI sex robots are going to be around. I mean, I will enjoy it on Viagra probably at that time, but I will enjoy it. Will women roll back their behavior? I think at some point they will. But again, I'm not willing to wait. I don't think you should wait either. If you're a guy who lives in the Western world, I think, and you genuinely want to not only, have a future possibly wife and not even be afraid of getting married, right? Which is just a suicide, cultural suicide for men and financial suicide for men in a Western country. But you also just want to be around of feminine women. I always give you guys this one example. I know you're probably tired of this if you watch me all the time, like The Rock here, but opening a door to a woman here is a pleasure, because you're going to give her some masculine energy, and she's going to give back feminine energy. She will wire you most likely. She'll say thank you. She'll bop your head, and she will quickly try to not waste your time, and it will be a pleasurable experience. I don't open doors for Western women, right? Because it's always an unpleasant experience, because a lot of times you open a door and you don't even get acknowledged, because the Western women, a lot of them look at you as a doorman, literally. You're just there to provide free services for them, and it doesn't stop at opening doors, right? It's for paying for shit, providing safety and security, while not giving anything back to men. And I always say this: for as long as you Western men tolerate it, you're going to live in this shitty society where the only best friend you're going to have, the only real good relationships you're going to have, would be with robots in the future, and not actual real women, because you've allowed that. We've allowed that. So the best case scenario for you is to, figure out how to make money online, figure out how to, or retire, figure out how to part ways and keep in touch with your friends and family. That's what I think. I think we all figured that out during COVID. So I think we all have that skill and still Zoom installed, and come to Thailand is the best country for me, but there are so many other countries. Pick one if you're there. And that's what my project is all about at the millionmanproject.com. That link is in the description. The Rock says, at the very least, if Hunter's wife divorces him, he won't have to pay child support. That child will be abandoned in the fields. Well, that's how things are kind of still work here. Okay, a woman who ends up being a single mother a lot of times ends up paying for that child, and her family ends up paying. Not always, sometimes like one child goes with the father, another, but here women definitely get punished. Like here, I kind of wish there would be child support, because a lot of these women, all they do for the next 20 years is work their asses off, where the fathers who got them knocked up have absolutely no responsibilities. They're on to the next girl. I am, by the way, I am for child support. I'm just not for the child support where it's the way it's done right now, where first of all, it's set to somehow a ratio of how much money the man earns, despite the fact that diapers cost the same regardless of how much money the father earns. That child support should be set to the same thing and only vary by location, right? If if you got a girl pregnant in New York or Los Angeles, you're going to have to pay more than if you got a girl pregnant in the middle of Montana or South Carolina, right? That is fine. If the child has any special needs, obviously that needs to be adjusted. But I'm absolutely against the child support being, dependent on the salary. It should be the same no matter what. I don't give a shit if you don't have a job as a man. You got to provide. But it needs to be set to a reasonable amount, and it should never, ever, ever, ever be paid to the mother, because these mothers, you really think that child support, most of it goes to the child? Fuck no. Fuck no. It goes to her nail appointments, it goes to her purses and her new iPhone and stuff like that. We all know that, right? So the child support has to go to the providers of the products and services for that child, whether an after-school program or partially rent, right? If a child is grown enough where, the child has his or her own room, then, prorate that rent within a reason, right? So all of that has to be reasonable. Where here, in Thailand, I do have to say, in many other countries here, I wish there was child support, but in America, it's like the other way around. So again, for child support, but not the divorce rape, as Paul Elam says. It's just like, why can't we have the happy medium where everything's fair for everybody? Because it's either really fair for one side and unfair for the other side, or it's like the other way around. Like Western societies, and I think the world just does no longer live in the middle where I think most people would be happy. It always has to be one real extreme or the other, and that's what's happening in America and many other European countries, right? It's either Trump, which is an extreme, or Kamala Harris, which is an extreme, right? Why can't we have what's his name, John Kasich, right? Remember him? He was very middle. He was nice and a good man. I mean, still is, probably is alive, right? So yeah, but these are the struggles of an independent, I guess. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. This was another fun show. Tomorrow I'll be back with more men's news. Tomorrow, I think it's so it's Wednesdays. I think it's a Delulu of the week, right? I forget my weekly segments, but I will definitely review another dating profile, and I will absolutely have another comment of the day. So please keep them coming. They're not that easy to find sometimes because I want the juicy ones, but I'll find one and I'll feature one tomorrow as well. Until then, have an amazing the rest of your night. If you want to ditch modern women and move abroad for more traditional relationships, go to themillionmanproject.com, take my most comprehensive course, and change your